The hero's journey is referenced pretty often today as a supposed standard to how we ought to tell stories in works of fiction. Not all the time, but often enough to be concerning. It's not the only kind of story, and it's not the only effective kind of story. What I'm trying to say is that The Last Jedi was good. This model of storytelling has been around for a very long time. The Odyssey is, I think, the most classic example of a hero's journey, or at least the most commonly referred to when talking about characters that go on an adventure, reach a goal, and are forever changed after the fact. I like the hero's journey. It works. Since it's been around as long as it has and people are still using it, you probably don't need me to tell you that. It typically makes stories into enclosed events that ask that we see them for that moment in time that they take place. There's a temporal finality to a hero's journey, where we can bounce all of our themes and characters off of one another until we have a completed thing that ends. I mean, I don't recall finishing Homer's Odyssey and wondering if Odysseus would eventually jump back on a horse and go on more quests, achieving and losing and learning more, but honestly I don't 100% recall finishing Homer's Odyssey. Shit. But I'm not here to talk about my academic misgivings or how qualified I am to talk about anything even remotely interesting, because that's what essayist YouTube is for. I am here to talk about what I think about after the fact. The now what at the end of the hero's journey, and the morality of a hero that goes on more than one journey. So you might be thinking, what is he going to use to talk about this? Is he going to use movie franchises? TV shows? Hey, cinematic universes are pretty huge and operate on multiple areas of change over several installments. What could he possibly... It feels weird to be doing this, but, spoilers ahead for the following quest storylines in RuneScape. Watch out. This game is 18 years old. RuneScape is an online MMORPG where you play as an adventurer set loose in a world where you can do 5% of anything you want. But for just $11 a month, you can... What RuneScape is about isn't new. There's a world to explore, there's a bunch of skills you can level up and improve on, there's different items and armor and NPCs and monsters you can interact with, and there are quests that your character can start and finish. All miniature enclosed stories. When I play, I personally like to do quests because I think stories are cool, and stories set in a cartoonishly silly mashup of different time periods and genres and cultures is kind of insane. It should be mentioned that there are thousands of other players surrounding you at all times, and you can interact with them, trade with them, and even in some circumstances have them help you with certain quests. But the stories themselves always place you at their center. It doesn't matter that everyone and their mother has done the Demon Slayer quest, where an apparently powerful ancient demon is set to return and you've got to slay him, because as far as you have to be concerned, you're the only one that's done it. You're the main character of RuneScape. That quest even establishes you as the chosen one, even though you are well aware that others have done the same quest and probably other quests down the line that make quests like Demon Slayer look relatively silly and low stakes. But the game still positions you as its main priority, for better or worse. You are the hero of your story. Now, I mentioned quests down the line, and I do want to talk more about that. But first, I just want to take a look at how the quests operate as standalone heroes' journeys. For right now, I'll be using RuneScape's free-to-play quests, because admittedly, they are the least complex to do this with. My favorite quest in all of RuneScape is Cook's Assistant, because I have no doubt that it started as an innocent, perfect model of what a standard quest in the game could be. I can tell you the whole thing in under a minute. The chef of Lumbridge Castle is scrambling to make a cake because it's the Duke of Lumbridge's birthday, and he forgot. You agree to help him, and you get all the necessary ingredients needed: a pot of flour, an egg, and a bucket of milk. You can get all this stuff locally, from different farms, by helping yourself to other people's stuff, but at the end of the day, you have yourself the 3 ingredients, you return them to the chef, and he thanks you. Quest complete. Now, is that a hero's journey? Not narratively, there's no personal obstacle and no personal change to your character by the quest's conclusion, but as a player, it is a hero's journey. You set out on your adventure, your obstacles are in how you interact with the game and figure out how to get a pot of flour, a bucket of milk, and an egg, and you literally change in that you gain experience points for assisting the cook. So, the first impression you might get from RuneScape is that the quests aren't really traditional narrative quests. They're ludonarrative quests, in that they prioritize the player's progression through gameplay instead of worrying too much about the tangible implications of the stories they're telling. As a game, that kinda makes sense. Gamers like to feel like they're progressing, and the simplest version of that is, watching the numbers go up. Now, Cook's Assistant is pretty generally safe in terms of what it has to say about the hero's morality. It's weird that you can just take milk without asking, or use a flour mill without asking, or kill a farmer's chickens until it drops an egg without asking, but the argument can be made that the game doesn't care. The chickens respawn fast, the flour mill is open for public use, and so are the dairy cows, apparently, and there are NPCs that will justify this to you. But as you continue on and do more quests, the thematic want of your character becomes very clear. More often than not, when you're looking for a quest, you need not look further than clicking on an option when talking to a quest start NPC that says, "I'm looking for a quest." Suddenly the hero becomes one by agency, in that they just want to do something for someone. The player, by extension, becomes someone who wants to do something for themselves. You want quest points? You want skill boosts? You want the cape? The cape? We'll get to the cape. If you want any of this, you'll seek out more quests. There's a disconnect there, and that disconnect makes your choices that much more wide-ranged. You might be, at any given moment, looking for a specific reward, but the hero, almost always, is just looking for a quest. Now, why am I so focused on the ludonarrative here? What does that have to do with the hero's journey? Well, what I find to be the most fascinating thing about questing on RuneScape is focusing on it narratively despite narrative not being the priority of the developers. Because if you consider the implications of doing all or even most of RuneScape's quests, you are morally transforming the hero character into something else. But we'll get to that. Many of RuneScape's free-to-play quests are simple and straightforward, with even its most intricate quest being something a pay-to-play player would look back at as a fun and easy little task to complete. Cook's Assistant isn't hard. Demon Slayer isn't hard. Dragon Slayer, retrospectively, isn't hard. Each of these heroes' journeys come and go, nothing but small and enclosed little stories with wraparound endings. No need to consider them further than the context they provide, right? Well, let me tell you about Shadow of the Storm, Recipe for Disaster, and Dragon Slayer 2. Many members' quests are sequels to free-to-play quests, and are also sequels to each other. It reaches a point where there are entangled webs of quests you need to complete to do bigger and bigger quests, and before long, your simple and enclosed journeys have reached cinematic universe levels of convoluted. Remember in Cook's Assistant when it was the Duke's birthday, and that's why you had to scramble to find those ingredients for his birthday cake, put simply? Well, if you start Recipe for Disaster, you're in for a harsh blow. It's not actually the Duke's birthday. The cook was just testing you because there's a much bigger task he needs you to complete. And then it also gets weirder. Cook's Assistant was my favorite quest because it was the perfect model for a hero's journey. And now all of that is upended by the journey being incomplete. It turns out your singular enclosed story was just the prelude to the bigger story. The hero's journey isn't over. And at that, you have to complete dozens of quests in order to fully finish Recipe for Disaster. So many quests that I haven't even completed Recipe for Disaster yet. I'm serious. And the same goes for dozens of other sequel quests, which act as their own separate stories until their follow-ups show up and add more to them. The all-powerful demon you slayed with that magical sword? Well, actually, there's a bigger demon, and you need to enhance that sword to stop him. That dragon you had to slay in order to be able to be considered a champion? Well, okay, so there's apparently multiple dragons 10 times as powerful as him, and you need to slay all of them. I am never doing Dragon Slayer 2, and you cannot make me. There is no traditional hero's journey in RuneScape. Your character's mission is ongoing. They are gaining experience, being mildly changed after the fact of each installment, each quest, but they're never truly finished. The story is never truly over. Until, finally, it is. Remember earlier I mentioned the cape? Well, when you max out a certain skill, there are skill capes that show that you maxed it out. No matter the skill, there's a cape for it. And the capes aren't just for that. There's a cape for unlocking all the music in RuneScape. And also, as expected, there's a cape for questing. If you complete all of the quests in your quest diary, all 220 of them, you get the quest cape. Now, forget the player for a second, who probably spent a lot of time and did a lot of work to get that cape. I want us to look solely at the hero again, the character, and realize that if he wears that cape, he is one of the most terrifying people in all of RuneScape. The morality of the adventurer changes entirely each time major quests are completed. There are times where your character is fully altruistic and helpful and simply wants to do good, and there are other times where he's slightly more vindictive and out for a reward, or looking to be intentionally malicious even to seemingly decent people around him. That's because the quests are written by different developers, which makes all this work even better. If every story is written with your hero having different attitudes, different feelings directed at different people, if your character has killed endless monsters and people of different roles in the world in order to complete every last quest in the book, then this is without a doubt the most confusing individual in the world. What does he even believe in? Is he good or evil, or is he simply motivated by the desire to say he's met every challenge under the sun, regardless of the moral circumstances surrounding them? Is he even a hero by the end of RuneScape's story? I don't know. He'd just be someone who's done everything, met everyone, killed countless beings, helped countless more, and by the end has a piece of clothing to show for what they've become. Now, I think that's way more interesting than just allowing for the game to be a game. As a narrative, RuneScape is about the most conceivably interesting person alive, and his hero's journey to become something more than a hero, forever changed by the end.